Welcome everybody. We're going to talk about nipple trauma. And I know that I've done videos in the past on nipple pain, sore nipples, that kind of thing. So it's going to be something just kind of a little more updated because I believe it's an old video. I've done probably a year ago or more, and so I'm just going to do an updated one. Not that the information has really changed any, but just because I feel like sometimes it's just good. Whenever I teach a class, I never teach the classes the same way every time. It's like, for some reason, I'll cover the same information, but it's like I change it a little bit. So I just figured that we talk a little bit about nipple trauma and just kind of do a little updated video on it. So we're going to talk about what is normal and what isn't normal, and what some of the causes of nipple pain are, and what you can do about it. So we're going to start with what is normal. And just like labor, they'll tell you what is normal, what you feel that's normal. What I always think of is with a C-section, they'll tell a mom it's not normal to feel pain, but you'll feel like a tugging, a pulling. It's not necessarily a wonderful feeling, but it is a normal feeling, so not to get afraid. Because a lot of times moms, it's not so much the pain, but the fear of that, what they're feeling, that is hard for them. So I kind of think of that when I think of nipples and the pain, or what you should feel. And sometimes what we might feel is pain when it's not really pain, but it's, kind of there in between. So it is normal to feel a pulling and a tugging when they're feeding. That is perfectly normal to feel a little bit of that pulling and tugging. To feel a little bit of sensations in the breast is normal. Not really sure where it is. You're like, okay, it's not really pain, but it just kind of weird feeling. That is normal. The letdown, every mom describes it differently. I felt like it was like pins and needles kind of feeling, like when something goes numb. But other moms would describe it differently. Some moms describe it as painful, when in reality, when they actually compare it to other pain, they realize it's not really painful. It's just not necessarily comfortable. So it's normal to feel tugging or pulling, but no pain. It might be a little bit uncomfortable the first 1 to 2 weeks, just because, you have this baby sucking on you every couple of hours or less, and your nipple is not used to it. So it can be a little bit uncomfortable for the first couple weeks just from that. Like, it's like wearing new shoes and you get like a little blister from rubbing. Not a blister because that's not like, something's wrong if you have a blister where it's big and boily, that means the shoe is too small or something's wrong. But it can be a little bit uncomfortable to wear a shoe, brand new shoe, and the same with just because you're not used to it. Sometimes that discomfort can come from not allowing the nipples to air dry after a feed. And so I always would tell moms, I know it might feel weird, but letting the breast, hang there for a minute or two so that it dries, and then to put close your bra back up, but don't close it up right away, because then that moisture sits on there and that can cause some discomfort. Sometimes hormonal, just the difference in hormones. We know how sore our breasts can get when, we're with PMS or ovulation, whatever, we tend to have sore breasts. So sometimes a little bit of hormone issues can cause you to have some soreness in the breast, but it should not be painful. You should not be feeling pain. And then also, you could feel some discomfort due to feeding techniques that you're doing, that possibly the baby isn't latching correctly, the baby's not latching as deep as they should, or it could be that the baby's positioned not very well. The baby tends to slide down and not stay on very good. Let's see, what are some other positionings matter? Nipple, how they're on the nipple matters, how they're latched matters. So there's like a little bit of some of those things that can cause it to be a little bit uncomfortable. But what's not normal is intense pain where you feel like you got to grab hold of something, brings you to tears maybe. It's just horrible, and you dread the next feeding. That is not normal. Pain during the whole feed or in between feeds even. So if you're still sore when they're not feeding, that's not normal. If you put them on and it hurts a little bit, but then it goes away and everything is good, then most likely it might just be, as long as it's not a intense pain. We're not talking about really an intense pain, just a little bit of discomfort in the beginning. But if it's painful throughout the whole feeding, something is wrong. And the first thing I say is that as soon as you feel pain, get help. Get someone to observe the feeding, to watch you when you're feeding them. A lot of times the doctors want you to bring the babies in a couple days later after they've gone home. So that's a good opportunity to have someone observe you feed the baby, and that way they can tell you if the baby's latched correctly. Because the problem is when a mom feels pain, she thinks it's normal, or she thinks maybe, it'll go away on its own. And then other things start to happen, such as broken skin, blisters, bleeding, color change in the nipple. None of that is normal. A burning sensation, that is not normal. Pain that doesn't get better after a couple of days, that's not normal. And again, like I said, we're talking about intense pain. We're talking about pain that is very uncomfortable. We're sometimes, like I said, a mom can describe her letdown as painful, but not to the point where she can't deal with it. And I hate to say that because everybody's pain level is different. I don't want it. I just say, if you feel pain, get help right away. Because if I tell you that that's normal, what little pain you're feeling is normal, that's not the pain we're talking about, and then you don't go get help, and then it gets worse, that I don't want to happen. I don't want you to end up damaging your nipples because you thought what you were feeling was normal. So if you feel pain, if you describe any of your experience with pain, as painful, then definitely get someone to watch you breastfeed. It can be done even with someone over YouTube, FaceTime, that kind of thing. It does not have to be something face-to-face even. So if you would like someone to view you that is willing to do FaceTime, I do FaceTime observations, and I will do Skype observations, anywhere where I can see you and I can observe how the baby's feeding. That's something that I can help with as well. If that's something you're interested in, you can let me know. Contact me through Twitter, comments below, that kind of thing. Okay, so some of the causes of pain. First, I want to say that it's typical and normal for a mom to have the baby blues. So postpartum depression is a little more, postpartum depression is more than just the normal postpartum blues. Okay, so nipple pain can make it can cause postpartum depression. It can make your postpartum depression worse. So that's why I say, if you're feeling pain, take care of it right away. Get help right away, because we don't want it to get worse. We don't want it to affect you and your baby or how you are feeling as a mom. You go through enough. You don't need to struggle with that. So, okay, so I kind of mentioned a few things of causes. So it could be caused by trauma or damage. So when we say that, it means a baby breastfeeding wrong, latching wrong, and continues to latch incorrectly causes trauma and damage to the nipple. And that's why right away, if you feel pain, we don't want trauma and damage done to the nipple. One day, full day of bad breastfeeding can cause trauma or damage to the nipple, and we don't want that, because then what you have to go through, it's tough, and no one should have to go through that. So a lot of times pain can be caused by that. Another thing, baby might be latching really well, and you have no pain, but all of a sudden you start to experience pain, soreness. It hurts really bad when they latch. So either they weren't latching correctly, or it could be that you're not taking them off your breast correctly, or like I said, not letting the nipple air dry, so then it starts to get chapped, that kind of thing. So one thing I notice a lot of moms will do is not take the baby off the breast correctly, so they kind of just pull them off the nipple. That can cause damage to the nipple. And so you may not have any latching issues, but then all of a sudden you have this pain. And that could be because of not caring for your nipples properly, which is just, pulling the baby off incorrectly, or not allowing your nipples to air dry, things like that. Another one is a shallow latch. So the baby's not latched. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the latching. They're not latched deep enough. Maybe they get on, but then they slowly slide off. Baby is not centered properly on the breast. So maybe they're not getting the mouth full of breast. So they're getting like the tip of the nipple, but like just the nipple, not enough of the areola in their mouth with that dark skin around the areola. They don't have to get all of it. Some moms have larger areolas, some have smaller. It doesn't always have to be the whole areola, but it has to be as much breast in their mouth as possible. And then you're really less likely to have nipple feeding. But sometimes they can slowly slide off and down onto the nipple, and so they start off latched well, but then you're not really paying attention. You might just be feeding them, you're not really noticing, and they've slowly slid down, and now they're nipple feeding. So you got to have to watch for that as well. Another thing could be the chin away from the breast. So if there's a lot of space between their chin and the breast, and they're not on correctly, that a lot of times could be nipple feeding. So definitely if there's a lot of space between the chin and the breast, then they're not on the breast correctly. Positioning is really important. And I mentioned this in my other video, and I probably should use this picture. But this picture here, if you notice, the baby is not, see how the baby has to turn his head or her head to breastfeed, and their belly is faced up. We want their belly facing you. So the baby's belly should be touching your belly. Their butt should be what's facing out, and their nose and their mouth are in line with your nipple. So they should not have to turn their head to reach the nipple. The nipple should be in front, and they're faced forward, stomach to stomach, their belly to your belly. That's the way they should be positioned. So no matter what position you use, they should be facing your breast, and their nose and their mouth in line with your nipple. So just remembering that we don't want them to have to turn their head, and then their head be one way and their body be faced a different, because imagine yourself trying to drink something or eat something that way. It's hard. Imagine, like, I know sometimes I'll wake up to take medicine and I won't be completely sitting up, and it's hard to swallow that way. So just thinking, kind of like putting yourself in the position they are and thinking, is this an easy way to swallow? Are they able to feed properly? So positioning, it makes a big difference. How they should be faced, it makes a big difference. Another thing that can help with the latch is gravity, because if you do like the leaned back position, the more gravity helps them get a deeper latch onto the breast. So that is something that can help. Another cause for nipple damage is when you are engorged or your breasts are very full. So this can happen when your milk first increases, or it can happen when you've missed feedings and you put the baby to the breast and they cannot latch completely on the breast because it's so full and hard. And this can damage the nipple. So the important thing to do when that happens, when your breasts are really full like that, is to hand express or pump or empty, get some of that milk out of your breast so that it's soft enough for the baby to latch. You're not trying to get all of it out. You're just trying to make the breast soft enough for the baby to latch so you're not damaging the nipples, because that is another big cause of nipple damage. Another one could be possibly inverted or flat nipples. So if your nipple is a little bit inverted, or, and I'll give you an example of it, or is flat, this can cause some damage to the nipple because the baby is not latching correctly. So a lot of times there's things that you can do sometimes, hand expressing a little bit, pumping a little bit before you latch the baby, doing things to make sure that the baby is latched correctly is important. Here is a picture of an inverted nipple. A lot of times with an inverted nipple, once you pump or the baby starts to feed, it pulls the nipple out. And so that can help. But sometimes if a baby's not latched correctly, it doesn't happen, and then their mouth is grabbing onto certain areas, and it can cause some soreness. So that is another possible cause. Another picture of an inverted nipple is right here. That's just another possible look of what an inverted nipple looks like. An engorged nipple, or an engorged breast, this is a really engorged breast, but it's very full and not soft enough for the baby to latch. That's like an extremely engorged, but it can happen. Another thing could be just that your nipple is very wide compared to the baby's mouth. For instance, here's a picture of a mom's nipple and her baby's mouth. You can tell that the nipple is very large and hard for that baby to get a mouthful of breast. They're getting more like a mouthful of nipple. So basically, you have to, with a situation like that, you just want to make sure they get on as deep as possible and kind of like taking good care of your nipple, allowing it to air dry, using whatever you can to help soothe it, and you're kind of like having to wait for the baby's mouth to get a little bit larger. But you can avoid a lot of things, a lot of pain, if you just make sure the baby's mouth is open as wide as that baby can get it, especially when your nipple is a little bit larger. A mom's nipple that is smaller, a lot smaller, can also cause a little bit of difficulty, just that the baby's not latching as well because the nipple is a lot smaller. So whether it's very big, wide nipple or a very small nipple, it doesn't really matter whether it's inverted or it's flat. Any of those situations can cause pain, but it doesn't have to. It can cause trauma to the nipple, but it doesn't have to. So like I said, getting help right away is important. Let's see. So I mentioned the inverted nipples, and an example of a flat nipple basically speaks for itself. It's just completely flat. And so this can happen due to an excess of IV fluids. It can happen just because you have a lot of milk, you're engorged. So the most important thing is to soften that breast. Another thing that can cause flat nipples is obesity or being overweight. So this kind of expands the areola, and it puts traction on the nipple, and this kind of stretches it and causes it to be flat. So some of those can be causes, and like I said, there are things that you can do when you have flat or inverted nipples, and I will try to put a link below that talks about some of those things. I don't want to go in too much about a baby's mouth, what could cause some trauma because of the baby's mouth, because this is something more like, it does happen like a tongue tie. If the baby has a very large groove in the upper part of their mouth, that can cause it. Let's see, a short tongue, short labial frenulum. I mean, it's just like, these are things one of the reasons I don't want to go into a whole lot is these are things that are a little more technical, a little more that they would need to be diagnosed. Like, you would want to see a lactation consultant. You'd want to talk to a pediatrician to see if your baby has any of these anatomical. So if you've tried everything and all the things I've mentioned before are not the causes of your nipple trauma, but you're still having it, these are some things to check too, is the baby's mouth. And is there anything anatomically wrong that's causing the baby to suck on your breast wrong? And this is where it's becoming uncomfortable. So that is something that's important. Let's see. Also, being too rough with your nipples can cause it. So like if you're washing them with soap and water and you're scrubbing them to keep them clean, you don't need to do that. You don't really need to do anything besides just allowing them to air dry. Of course, you're going to take a shower and the warm water rinses them. You don't need to use harsh chemicals. You don't need to scrub them, just cleaning them. If you have something like thrush, which is a yeast infection of the nipple or the baby's mouth, this can cause soreness to the nipple. It can cause trauma to the nipple, and it can cause issues as well. And then you might be cleaning your areola and your breast a little bit different, but you still would not use harsh chemicals or do a lot of scrubbing, because that is not going to protect. It's not going to care for your nipple and make the sore nipples better. It only would make it worse. So that's important to note. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about, like as far as what is normal and what isn't normal. And it is important to kind of know what to do to help with sore nipples and what some of the treatments are. A lot of times people will use the soothing gels. They'll use the soothing gel pads in there, just in the bra, and it kind of cools them down. Some will use lanolin. Some will use oils like peppermint gel, oral antibiotics if it's infected. Some will use like olive oil. Those are all things that you would want to talk with a lactation consultant about and get their help on that. So that's, again, most of this stuff, I'm talking about it and telling you what's normal and what isn't. And for further help, you should talk with a lactation consultant, or you could talk with me privately and we could talk about the things that you could try or do that would help you. It's not something I would do in a video because every person, every case is different. So what you need to know is what's normal and what isn't normal. And if you're experiencing something that isn't normal, then you would want to talk to somebody and get observed. How you're feeding the baby, what your nipples look like. Those are things that need to be looked at. So knowing what's normal is important, and knowing what's not normal is important. So that's pretty much what the video is for. If you need further help, feel free to contact me through Twitter, comments, emails, whatever works for you. And I hope that this helps a little bit. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to comment below. And I will see you guys in my next video. You guys have a great day.